Well, welcome to the Inviting Shift interviews. I'm Christina Smith and I'm an AHA addict. So I have people on to tell me about their big AHAs in life and big shifts that they've made and how they kind of made them. I mean, because I think that we are all shifting something in our life. And by being able to hear other people's stories, sometimes that'll trigger some things in us to move as well. So today we have two ladies on. We have Sarah Wood and Ellie Bursko, and they're both going to tell us about shifts that they had. Well, I'm not going to even tell you about it. I'll let them tell you about it. But they've both had great shifts. So Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. So my training is in eating psychology and holistic nutrition. So the shift I will share will be kind of what led me to this way of working with people. And the sole focus this year has been about helping other women pretty much dump their diets and find the solution to living healthy and happy and hopefully, like you say in your title, in a way that actually lands for them and doesn't feel like it's restricting or doesn't feel like it's an uphill battle to sustain. So that's kind of where I experienced my own big shift and probably the story I'll go into today.
Okay, perfect. And Ellie, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a business coach for personal trainers and coaches. I actually started out as a personal trainer myself 5 years ago, doing boot camps for mums with babysitting included, and then have grown and evolved over the years. Now I coach not just the strategy with marketing and sales, but also in helping people have mindset shifts, overcoming limiting beliefs, building their confidence, things like that, so that they can not only make more money, but do so in a way where they don't burn themselves out and actually create their best life possible.
Yeah, awesome. And I think that as we hear both these stories, we're going to see how they really intertwine. So, like, we can talk.
Lost her. Oh no.
Oh no, am I not here?
Well,
hopefully she's able to jump back on.
Yeah, I feel like this is a blab thing that tends to happen.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's just I don't know what it is. It gets so finicky sometimes.
Yeah.
But hopefully it's just a temporary thing.
Yeah, yeah.
The phone. Let's see.
No.
So it's Wednesday for you, right? It's 9 a.m. Wednesday. Okay. So that's right. You're always like a day ahead. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
What the hell?
Did you want to talk a little bit start talking about yours whilst we're waiting for her, or?
Sure, yeah, we could probably do that. Yeah, I was just checking the phone to see if she had a message, but I can go into it. It's just so we don't have an awkward lag here.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So my big transition that I usually think about when someone asks me that question is first when I went from being pretty sick and kind of unaware of how my lifestyle habits were affecting how my body felt internally. So that was, my gosh, that was probably almost 5 years ago. So I grew up really severely asthmatic, severe allergies. And for me, that was just kind of my reality. Like that's who you are. You're going to take this medicine and just kind of maintain and try to control the symptoms. And then I had my first baby. So I would say for me, I think people along the way had probably made suggestions to me that were a little more holistically minded of things I could try. Not my doctors, not the people who were immediately in my life, but I know that there had been things that had come up like, well, have you considered going to a naturopath? Have you considered trying to let go of gluten? Like those suggestions were made. But I think the conversation around shifting is really important because I didn't have a significant enough of a shift to care, to want to try something to me that sounded very restricting and sounded very difficult. Hey, you're
Yeah,
back.
thank you for carrying on.
Yeah, so we decided I would just start to kind of go into the
Yeah.
story just so we didn't have kind of a big lag period.
Thank you.
But yeah, so I was talking about how I started out most of my life, for the first 25 years of my life, I had a different mentality about what it meant to be healthy. For me, I thought I was destined to just maintain, you know, the asthma, the allergies, the getting sick throughout the year. That was just something I accepted I was living with, and controlling the symptoms with medication. And for me, like, healthy was, well, I go out and I go to the gym, or, you know, I try to control how many calories I eat. And so I didn't really have a reason until I had a big shift to try something radically different. That at that time, when I was single, when I was, you know, focused on my career, just different reality, I didn't have the investment to try something to me at the time that sounded very difficult, which was to make big nutritional changes, or to change my reaction to, you know, my stress, to do some lifestyle management so that the stress wasn't triggering the symptoms as intensely as it was. And for me, I started to go into my big shift happened when I had my first baby. And I had no experience in motherhood. It took me a long time to even admit that I was in like a committed relationship with my husband. And, you know, I just I don't think I was like a natural mother. So for me, it was a big wake up call, like, whoa, okay, like, you've spent so many of your years focused on a lot of these things you want to do for yourself, but you're also now carrying a baby inside you, and the baby's going to come out, and you really are facing two decisions. And one for me was, do I want her to grow up in the same way I did, which was, I spent so much time in doctor's offices. I was on so many different medications. I took a lot of steroid pills. At that time, I was taking a steroid inhaler. I would get drops for the allergies. I would get shots sometimes. I had gone on prednisone when I would catch pneumonia, which I caught an abnormal amount of times. And then I just really was fearful that she didn't have a choice, that she would have to inherit that and go through that. But now my mind was open to, what if she doesn't? And what if there was a different way for her to experience life and health? And that's when I think my shift took place, which was, now I'm ready to receive the help. Now I'm ready to hear the different ways to do this. And I would say that was shift number one for me. But what I also had to come to terms with was, I had been very much an intense perfectionist, and I think many of us are, you know, intense perfectionist and people pleaser at the same time, and those two things are wonderful when they're combined. And so in that, if I wanted to do something, I would give myself a really hard time. I had to go all in, had to do it perfectly. I was a teacher, so I wanted to teach people how I was doing it. But I also wanted to make people feel happy and comfortable and not be mad and not be upset. And I kind of went into this new lifestyle like, holy crap, like, this works. Like, when I change how I'm eating, when I let go of some of these foods and I move my body differently, I feel really good. And I did completely wean off of the medication and felt better than I realized it was possible. You know, when you live in a certain like level of health for so long, you're not really aware of it yet, like that the brain fog doesn't have to be normal, that you don't have to feel that drained every day. But here's the big but, and why I got into eating psychology was, I also woke up that perfection beast like a crazy bitch. Like, she was out, she found this new perfect diet, she was ready to be in control, she was ready to like do this perfect lifestyle. And that created a lot of awareness for me of how unrealistic that was. So that every time, once I had experienced the big lifestyle change and the benefits from that, though, my mindset started to kind of undo a lot of that by creating a lot of stress around, now I'm constantly obsessed over what I'm eating. Now I'm constantly, analyzing the food and the ingredients and worried about what my daughter's eating. And I'm a basket case of I have to go out to eat. And, like my relationship to food and exercise had become very clinical, very much about results and not really based on, well, what's actually nourishing and actually feeding what your body needs now. And so this is where the second shift came. And I think the first shift fed it, which was it woke up in a reality that I was in denial of for so long, which was that need to be in control. Mm-hmm. And I did that through food. I did it through food. But it was my relationship to food that made me aware of my relationship to a lot of other things and how I showed up in my relationships with my friends, with my husband, with, my parenting skills. And that was that anxiety around if I'm not in control, then everything's going to unravel and fall apart. And so one day, I had gone back to teaching, and I was the school administrator at an alternative school. And so I was going back there. It was about 30 to 40 hours a week, depending. And then I had my daughter. My second daughter wasn't around yet. And so I was still her primary caregiver. So I was like always scrambling to figure out where she would be while I was at work. My husband and I were in a lot of conflict over me being at work. And then I was trying to do this perfect lifestyle at the same time. And I had, the good food, bad food list. I had this is how much I'm going to exercise today. If I don't get it in, I'm going to stay up until midnight to get it in, because I'm on this schedule that is so not conducive to the lifestyle I was trying to force. And my big shift came actually at that point when I was like, finally realizing like, holy cow, I'm supposed to be feeling awesome, but now my energy is dropping lower. Now I'm becoming more irritable. I'm really hard to be around. And I had gone into my classroom that day, and I remember like leaning on my desk and feeling like all I want to do is lay down, which to me, I did not want to admit to anyone because I was trying so hard to just show that I had it all figured out, that I was okay, everything was fine. But my best friend walked in the room, who was also a colleague, and she just looked at me and she's very honest. She said, "Wow, you look like shit." Like, oh my gosh, like I feel like that too. And I just kind of broke down, and I really love her for that because no one else, was frank enough to say it. And I knew she said it from a place of love, but to me, it was that change in mindset, which was, this isn't right. This doesn't make sense if you're eating and following the plan that the diet books taught you, that the nutrition program taught you, even though you're following it to a T. If your body's responding in this way, that's not normal. And what it did was, that's what inspired okay, there's a lot more to it than this. There's a lot more to it than the food. And I entered into this whole new journey and search for what is the lesson here and what is this teaching me? And that's kind of what took me down that path toward studying the psychology behind eating, how we eat food, our lives, and how our stress levels and everything, how that affects our current state of wellness and how we feel, and that it just isn't as simple as tell me what to eat, tell me what else I need to eliminate from my diet, tell me how much I need to exercise and exactly how. That was the culture I was bought into for so long, which was just give me a diet plan, give me the system, give me the how-to steps. And I think there's a big leap of faith, and that was the shift for me, which was, what if I let that go? And that's what I say when I talk about dumping the diet, which is dumping the dieting mentality. Can I trust that I can let that go and step into a higher wisdom that is my body, what my body has been trying to tell me all along, which is this way of eating worked for you for this long, but not when you're on this kind of a lifestyle, not when you're this stressed, not when your schedule looks like this, not when you're fighting with your husband every night. You have to listen and ask, what's the wisdom here? So I think for me, it wasn't just one big shift and aha, and like now, like the light is at the end of the tunnel and I'm finally happy and happily ever after. It was one shift begets one shift, which is kind of like a domino effect. And now I'm just really excited for what else is to come. Like I know it's not over, and there's going to be a lot more transformation.
Absolutely. And you had some really great points in that story. I mean, I could relate to a lot of it because my coaching, I became a coach because of my own health problems too, because I always took the pill and ignored it. And okay, then I got a different symptom and I was like, oh, let me take another pill and ignore that. And I accumulated a lot of pills. And to one point, I just got really sick and nothing was helping. And I was in bed for months at a time. And then I got to the same point where I was like, I need to do something about this. And the other point that I thought that was really, really interesting was that your shift came when you were pregnant. And I find this so much, especially in women, that our shifts come when we go, well, I can handle this, but I don't want this for my child. And then that's when we make really, really big choices often, is when we don't want it for somebody that we love and we realize that we're affecting them, because that really rings true in my life. And I think what you say about having one shift kind of beget into another shift, I mean, that's how shift goes, because we couldn't get from point A to point Z, straight over. It wouldn't make any sense to us. And I love that, because I think that a lot of health coaches go through that too, or eating psychology coaches, is where they go through this point where they're like, I'm going to be perfect. I'm going to do everything perfect. And, I'm going to have this. I remember when I was still, going through school, I was working at a corporate job, and everybody else, would be afraid to eat lunch around me because
I
was so strict with my food. And they'd be like, don't tell me not to eat this. I'm like, you want me to tell you why you shouldn't? But that was me, and I was really strict. And then all of a sudden I realized, after having a few clients, like, this is not the way, and I realized that there's a balance to listening to your body, and I think what you found was it wasn't about the perfect diet. It's about really being able to listen to yourself and really hear, what does my body want from me, because there are times where a little macaroni and cheese isn't going to kill me. It might actually just bring my mood up, but I have to do it on a Friday night when I know I can't do anything else, because it's going to put me to sleep too. So, I mean, I think that there was a lot of really great information there. And we're going to listen to Ellie's, but I'm sure that we're going to be able to relate back.
We lost her again. I cut her off right when she was talking.
Yeah.
It was bad.
Could have been when you were.
No.
I know. This is one thing about Blab.
I've never had it before. I've had other issues, but not this.
This kept happening. We did a mastermind, and it would just drop people or weird noises. I don't know if you've gotten that, just like weird background noise. But oh well, hopefully she makes it back on. Well, let's try this real fast. I wonder if it's okay. Well, I don't know.
I guess I can start talking.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I was looking. I know here she is, because I know she had.
Yeah. I was actually going to say, let's go into Ellie's, and then we'll be able to relate back. So go ahead. I'm sorry I keep dropping off. I did make you guys post so that if I get lost, you guys are still here. So thank you very much.
Awesome. So, well, yeah, like Sarah, I've had a lot of shifts as well. And I guess the main ones have been when basically 6 years ago, I was living off Centrelink, which is like government payments. I just had my first child, and so I wasn't working, and my partner couldn't work because he was on a tourist visa. He wasn't allowed to work. He's from Portugal. And so we had no money. We couldn't afford a car. We couldn't even afford to eat meat. We were living off $50 groceries a week, which is probably about 25, 30 US. I don't even know how we did it.
Wow.
And I had to cycle and run everywhere just to get to where I needed to go. And it was in this time where we had a letter that came to us saying his visa wasn't approved. And I remember that was like my defining moment, I guess, where I could have just laid on the ground crying and thinking, why does all this bad stuff keep happening to us? Or I could decide to create a better life for myself and my family. And so I chose option 2. And in that time is when I started my first business as a personal trainer. And I ended up growing that business to 100K in the first year and 200K in under 2 years, because I had so much motivation to create a better life. Like, that was my push. And I guess that was my first big shift in going, well, I have the opportunity here to be able to create whatever life I want for myself. Most people choose the opposite. Most people choose to have that victim mentality and everything keeps going wrong and I'm so stuck and the world owes me something or whatever, where you really need to take responsibility for your own life. And it doesn't mean things are going to change in an instant. Things don't change overnight. You're not going to go from having no money to making 100 grand or whatever overnight, but it can happen quite quickly as well. Like, a year is not that long to be able to completely turn your life around. And now I've been in business for 5 years and I've had plenty of ups and downs along the way. In the beginning, that was my real push of like not having anything. Then when I started to be able to pay my bills and pay things I wanted, to be able to travel and that kind of thing, I started to get complacent because that motivation wasn't there anymore. I needed to change my why. And so I had some ups and downs. I had a mentor that I didn't gel with, and my income went downhill in 2014. Also, my second year in business, I started my business coaching business. I was running 2 businesses at the same time, which was full on. And I'm very masculine as well. I have like a lot of masculine energy. I was always push, push, push and all or nothing. And the mentors and people I looked up to were that kind of energy as well. And so in 2014, my income just went like this. I was just with the wrong mentor and I was in a bad mindset. And then at the end of 2014, something just clicked. Like, this was my next big shift, where I realized I was procrastinating on Facebook. I wasn't living life the way I wanted to. I wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't pushing myself forwards. And I felt like crap because of that. And a conversation with a mindset coach actually started to shift it. And that I realized then at the end, so it was December 2014, that I wanted to take my business seriously again, that I wanted to focus on sales, and that I wanted to create a better life again. So I ended up, I didn't have a mentor at the time. I ended up doing it by myself at this time, but I ended up tripling my business in 3 months just from having that mindset shift and focusing again. And since then, so since the end of 2014, I've now 7 times my business income.
Wow.
Like my monthly income. And not only that, but so in the past, it was that hustle, that push, 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 burning myself out up until quite recently, actually, about maybe not a few months ago, maybe 5-6 months ago, I was having 2 weeks where I would just be go, go, go. I'd be on this adrenaline high from making sales and coaching people and all of that. And then the third week, I would just be burnt out. I couldn't even form sentences. Like my brain wasn't working. I was exhausted. And I would do that every 2 weeks full on, 1 week just can't deal anymore. And I realized that it was because it took me a while to realize this actually, but with a lot of mindset work, I realized I was escaping into my business, and I was also escaping into the gym. I do powerlifting at a national level. So I was escaping into that and escaping into my business to not deal with what was going on a personal level. Mm-hmm. And so personally, I had to deal with my energy. I had to deal with balance. I had to deal with all or nothing mentality. But even deeper than that, I had to deal with my relationship with myself and also my relationship with my partner. And I was kind of neglecting all of that by just keeping myself busy all the time. And so I was finally able to let go of that. I created space, I created energy, and then all this relationship shit came up and it kind of came to a head. We had like this big thing happen and we were able to move past that together. And I found that we were disconnected and we were growing apart because I'd worked on myself so much, but my partner hadn't worked on himself. And obviously it's not all his fault. Both of us were doing things that weren't right. And now we're actually growing together. And he went and did his first personal development thing a few weeks ago. And I was just amazed that he finally did something around that. So now that I've come out the other side of that, obviously it's a continual journey, always working on yourself and relationships and things like that. But now that we've worked through that and I've worked on my energy and all those other things, everything's just flowing so easily and effortlessly now. And I'm making more money than I ever have, but I'm doing it in a way where I'm working a lot less. I'm only working 3 or 4 days a week now. And they're not even full days most days. I don't feel like I have to throw myself into my business all the time. I have time for my kids, and not just, I had time for them before, but I wasn't being present. So I'm more present. And also to relate it to health as well, I ended up putting on 16 kilos in the last 2.5 years, which I think is like 35 pounds since I started powerlifting. And I was telling myself all these stories that I didn't care about my weight. I love my body anyway. I just want to get strong. I don't care where my weight's at, until it got to the stage where I wasn't happy with my weight. And I kept trying all these things, and I'd lose a couple of kilos, gain them back, and just nothing was working. And it was only when I came out the other side, all this energy stuff and relationship stuff, that now it's just dropping off. Not even the weight, but the centimeters. I'm not even weighing myself anymore. But I've lost 24 centimeters in the last 3 weeks. Wow. And it's just, I invested in a health coach because I wanted that accountability and that commitment. I knew if I was putting a decent chunk of money down that I'd have to do the work, but it's just all areas are just flowing now, and it just happens. Yeah, it's really awesome.
There's something so fantastic. Can you hear the echo?
Not anymore.
A little bit. But
okay, not anymore. Great. Fantastic. I was going to get my headphones, but that's fantastic. I'm going to say there's something interesting when we start putting our focus in the right place, right? Instead of like you are focused on the extra kilos or the extra weight or, whatever. And then as soon as we get like a coach or somebody to hold us accountable, I find that when I don't focus on the thing that's the problem, it really, really helps. So when I focus on, how am I feeding myself, or how am I, what am I putting in my body? What am I doing? Am I being accountable for my choices? That's a big one.
Yeah.
That's when we actually can shift something. And that's what it sounds like you did. You shifted from going, okay, well, I don't like this weight, it's a little bit too much, to, okay, well, then I need to get outside help. I need to get somebody I can be accountable with. Yeah. And that's the actual action behind it. And I love that, because sometimes when people say they manifested their health or they manifested this, they manifested that, and it sounds really beautiful. And I'm all about manifesting like inner sovereignty and all kinds of great things. But the truth is, we do action to make that happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's one really, really important part, because one thing that I find on here is when I was writing my book, somebody said, you know, does it have to be from oh no to aha to shift? That isn't aha the shift. And it's like, it would be really great if aha was the shift, right? If we just discovered this truth and boom, it changed. But the truth is, just because I know a salad is better for me than, you know, a McDonald's lunch doesn't mean that I'm going to do it. You know, whatever it is doesn't mean that I'm going to do it. And the tough part is making those choices over and over and over again. And I think that that's why it's so important to mention that, you know, that we do have to reach out and get help. I know Sarah decided to go to the, you know, to get a degree in eating psychology. I mean, that makes sense. You know, she wanted to really figure out what was going on. You know, why do I feel crazy whether I'm following this diet plan or not? You know, like, so I think that that's so important that the two of you have really done the work behind it, though. You know, you followed up with conscious choices every day with these things.
Yeah. And also, I did invest in myself before in a nutrition coach, but I wasn't in the right mindset for it to work. And it wasn't that person wasn't the right fit for me, or there were a couple actually. It was doing flexible dieting if it fits your macros, and it just felt restrictive and it felt hard. And also I wasn't in the right mindset. Now that I am in the right mindset and it's a different approach, like literally the only thing I've changed is instead of having oats with sugar, milk and berries every morning for breakfast, I'm having 2 small meals of so my first meal, like, so steak, nuts and veggies. And then my second meal is usually like chicken, salad and nuts. That's literally all I've changed to lose 24 centimeters. Like,
awesome. But, and that's what it is. It's little changes. And I think that another thing that you mentioned is very important is that you could be just doing the wrong approach just because like you are trying to solve a problem and all of a sudden it's not feeling right. It could be the wrong thing. I mean, I don't think that there's anyone out there that would tell you, any coach out there that would be like, I'm 100% for 100% of the people. I know that there are certain people that I don't really think I fit well with to work with, whether that's on the coaching side or the client side. You know, I know that there's people that would be best served by some of my friends and colleagues that I know would do a much better job. But I've had a coach before that I didn't feel was right either, and I had to switch them up too. So I think what the important thing is, I mean, in both the mindset shift and like a health shift, is really knowing our bodies. I think that one thing that we can do is disconnect from our bodies so much. I'm sure, Sarah, you've learned all about this in your eating psychology, but it, you know, we're so computerized and so so far into technology that we can actually, you know, our thoughts are on the screen and we're not really feeling how our body is.
Yeah, and we're we are presented with answers all over the internet to all of these questions we have. That I think something I ask clients to do sometimes that I did personally is to take a nutrition media fast, where they just don't Google it for a while, you know, or don't read that article that tells them this thing that they've been doing that might now give them cancer, and then maybe it doesn't actually give them cancer, and just like that rabbit hole of things that are still not for sure, but plant those seeds of doubt and worry and anxiety, and takes you kind of out of that like intuition, which I think really was the theme of both shifts that were talked about here, was knowing like, oh wow, this isn't right. Like, this just doesn't feel right. This isn't where I want to be. And you don't need to Google that to find that out. You don't need to Google like, where should I be right now? You just kind of have that intuition. And like Ellie had said, like you know that you'll find that not everyone has for you what fits either. And sometimes there are growing pains of figuring out, like I had various practitioners as well when I was transitioning into a different lifestyle and different things that I was told to do that just, it didn't fit for me. And so really listening to that gut feeling of this is right or this is not right is really big too.
Yeah. I was also tracking the wrong thing. Like, I actually don't care where my weight's at as long as I feel good and I look good. Like, if my belly's not bloated and things like that. So by hopping on the scales every day like I used to, and it would go up and down depending on if I'd had holding a lot of water or if you're hormonal or whatever. And so I then get frustrated and I then sabotage myself because I was like, oh, I'm putting in all this hard work and it's not working. Whereas now I'm just looking at my measurements, the way I feel, the way I look in the mirror, and the scales have pretty much stayed the same. I've hardly lost anything, and I'm hardly weighing myself anyway, but I'm feeling awesome. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's so important. You know, I don't know if you ladies have ever read The Desire Map by Danielle Laporte, but I think she has a fantastic theory of how we make goals, is just figuring out how we want to feel. And once we figure out how we want to feel, then we start doing little things, not just big goals of how, you know, of losing that 30 pounds or, you know, whatever it is. It's about how do I want to feel when I get there. And I think we so often forget that because that's not how I was taught. I was taught you can be happy when that's done. You know, you can go do whatever you want to do when you're done working. So it was always, you know, do your work first, do more work, do better work, you know, work longer, all that stuff. It wasn't about enjoying, you know, life. You're not supposed to enjoy life. Life is suffering, right? It's not what the Buddhists say. But that we can actually design our lives and we can be conscious and mindful of, you know, each moment and really make a choice to feel how we want to feel by doing the things, you know, really acting upon those things. And I think that the more that we do that, it's not so much about, yeah, it's great if we always, you know, feel great. We're not going to, but it'd be really great. But it also brings us more mindful about how we feel in our body. Because I'll tell you, that was the biggest thing for me. Because I have ulcerative colitis. So I did change my diet and I did all the crazy things, you know, absolutely no dairy, no gluten, and I did a million different diets because every doctor would give me a different one. This one gave me all the white food, and this one gave me, you know, no grains or no beans. There was a million, and I had to actually learn. And today I have like a conglomeration of all of those diets because I had to start going, okay, Christina, if you really want the damn cereal, have the damn cereal. You know, it got to the point where I was being so particular about what I was eating that I wasn't eating anything. And then that made me even sicker. So I had to get to a point where I was like, I really had to feel it out. I had to have, you know, if I want to have cheese, I have cheese. And then I do what in my school they called research. We have some cheese and then we figure out what happens. Yeah. You know, and that's been the biggest shift for me. The reason I don't eat bagels, the reason I don't eat a lot of certain foods like macaroni and cheese or whatever is because I've learned myself, I've proven to myself that when I eat these things, I don't feel well. Yeah. And it's the most mindful way I can do it because the next time I see that food, yeah, I still think of that old habit of, whoa, wouldn't that be good? But then I also think of, yeah, but remember what happened last time? And that's how we learn, you know? So I really love that, Sarah, you shared that about being perfect because health is definitely not about being perfect. We still want to enjoy our lives. We still want to have that glass of wine sometimes or whatever, you know, for me it's vodka, but we still want to have that sometimes and we still want to have the chocolate cake. It's just about being really mindful and conscious about how often that chocolate cake and that vodka is going in compared to, you know, all the good stuff and then how it's making me feel. And that's the biggest indicator now. I haven't gone to the hospital in 2 or 3 years, and it's because I'm just very, very mindful. And people see me eat now and they're like, wow, you eat that? I'm like, well, today
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I had Nutella crepes filled with strawberries and with some ice cream on the weekend, and I was still leaner the next day. And it's like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely not about restricting ourselves. I just want to say hi to Michelle. She's someone who's been on before. She's actually going to be on the Coach's Corner call this Saturday. We're going to talk about expectations and goals. Because I think that they can be a real dream killer. The expectations part, not necessarily the goals. Well, ladies, I just want to ask you one really quick question then is, what's one thing that you're still shifting in your life?
Oh man. For me right now, it's actually been really setting clear and truly owning boundaries that I set. And that's been something I focused on all year. And one thing I realized I was doing, because it really came to my consciousness that it not only affected my life, like my, how I felt, how I interacted with people, because when you don't have boundaries, resentment festers. It affected my business growth. It affected like my client interaction and not having clear boundaries with clients. And also it affected how I felt physically, because I think when we aren't setting boundaries, there definitely is a place where we're not fully living authentically, meaning we're either apologizing for things we don't need to apologize for. We're explaining when we don't need to explain ourselves. Instead of saying, I can't come in today, we say, I can't come in today because of this and that, and I'm so sorry, but if you really, really need me, call me, and maybe I'll be able to come in, instead of just saying, no, I can't do it today. And so that, I think, for me, is a big into a new kind of power this year, and it's evolving. So it's interesting to see where it's taking me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Boundaries are so important. I think sometimes we hesitate making boundaries because we think it's going to distance us from someone else. But I always think of like children love to know where their boundaries are, like little kids. And so we give them playpens or gates or whatever. And when we do that, they feel safer and they feel more in connection with us because they understand what the line is. They understand, okay, I'm allowed to do this, I'm not. And so everything's pretty safe for them. And I think that relationships are definitely that way too. Creating boundaries really creates connection.
Yeah, cool.
Even though it doesn't feel that way. And Ellie, you?
I guess for me, it's about continually stepping it up to each next level. Once I've reached goals, then thinking bigger. Like I've recently just reached a lot of goals, and it's like, okay, I'm kind of floating along, and it's like, no, I need to be thinking bigger now, and reminding myself, like not falling back into those old patterns. So continuing to grow and to do so with having the balance plus the hustle. So not falling back into that, burning myself out again. And so like I've just hit, I had a goal to put 20K in savings, and I've just hit that last week. I've got a goal it's my 30th birthday in August, and I've got a goal to do 50K recurring income a month by my birthday. So I'm well on track to be doing that. But then also, like, I do have a big focus around money and around sales and around things like that. And just reminding myself that it's not just about that being present with my kids and having time out and building it in a way where I'm doing things that really excite me and fill me up as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that reminded me of something that I'm working on shifting, which is that piece that doesn't stop to rest or celebrate. I am a big time warrior, and I felt this right when you were saying, you know, when I'm between big things, I'm like, whoa, like what's next? What's going on? And that's exactly me. Like, I need to know what's the next big project, and it's like I'm still exhausted from the last one. Like, so give me a moment. And the other thing that I do is I have a women's circle that I go to every other week, and we sit and we talk about, you know, real life stuff. And for so many years, I have been doing so much personal growth work. I really related to you, Ellie, when you said, you know, I've been doing all this growth work and he wasn't really doing anything. My husband does do personal growth work, though, thank God. But I've done a ton of work, probably in part because of him, and through an organization called Woman Within. And I don't know if you've ever heard of that. They are in Australia, so that's why I ask. But so I go to Circle, and the last few circles, it's like I don't have any huge problems. Like I don't have any shame to talk about. I don't have any guilt, and I don't have any anger. And all of a sudden I'm like, there's something wrong. Am I hiding something? Am I stuffing something? And it's like, no, you've just done 7 years of personal growth work. Like, take a break, take a breath. You don't need to always be working on yourself, you know? So I'm really learning how to celebrate, and Rosalind's on too. Thanks, Rosalind. And I'm really learning to celebrate in between, because I think so often we can set all these goals, and then at least for me, I get to the goal and I'm already working on 3 more. So I forget to go, yay me, you know, I did this awesome thing. Like I wrote a book this year, and I was like ready to just go to the next thing, and people are congratulating me, and I'm like, on what? I haven't done the next thing yet. And they're like, just last week though. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm on to the next, you know. And I think that that's something that's really, really important. It really helps us honor ourselves and celebrate. You know,
I think having time in between as well helps you to kind of recharge for the next stuff.
So it's okay.
Yeah. And one thing I was thinking was also like goal checking. I think like you had said, you're going to talk about expectations and goals, and that's been really valuable, is to be more realistic of is this a crazy expectation I'm putting on myself, or is this actually the goal that's putting me on the path to, like you said, on the desire mapping, how I want to feel? Is it coming from a place of, well, this is where Ellie is, I want to be where Ellie is, so I'm trying to push myself to be Ellie now, and is that actually true for me? So I think that pause, like you talked about, like pausing between successes or even failures, and taking that as a sign to reflect and go within for a moment before pushing on to the next thing.
I actually did that with my mindset coach after I came out of all this relationship stuff, and we redid my values, and everything before was very business focused, money, all that kind of thing, like pushing and success and all of that. And it was really funny after I did this activity, like it wasn't just, okay, what are your values? But I did a whole activity to find them. And they ended up being completely different. So now my top 5 values are love, connection, happiness, environment, and health. And it's like, even just when I wrote them, I was like, wow, like that's a complete and it's cool because coming from that place of those things will make me money anyway, and everything else will happen and I'll reach my goals. But it's coming from a place of like if my relationship fell apart, like nothing else matters anyway. Like all the money in the world doesn't matter if I don't have a good relationship with my partner and with my kids and with myself.
And it's really about looking at your priorities. And I love how you restructured your life around those values, or changed your values when you reprioritize. Because I think that's basically what the desire map is about, knowing how you want to feel and really focusing on feeling those ways, or making those things priorities today. I'm making connection priority today because that's important to me. one of the exercises I was taught in school to do is the upside down triangle thing, where you put like the thing that you spend the most time on at the top, and the second and the third and the fourth, and then you design the triangle of how you wished it looked, you know, and then you compare them, because I mean, I know mine was completely like, I don't even think the things that were on this list were even on this list. Like they didn't even match, let alone like they were just rearranged in the wrong order. It was just, they completely didn't match. So I think that sometimes and at that point in my life, I was really frustrated and resentful. And it got to the point that I realized it was because, you know, I'd constantly put everybody else's wants ahead of mine and priorities ahead of what should have been more important for me. What you value most, yourself or your world? Somebody asked, do you value yourself or your world more? I think there's a balance between that, right? Between serving ourselves and serving others.
I think if you don't focus on yourself, if you're not working on yourself, or you don't have your foundations in place, whether that's sleep and health and mentally as well, like mindset wise and all those kinds of things, then you can't be anything to anyone else. Sort yourself out first to be able to then give to the world.
Yeah, and that makes me think of the boundary conversation of, you know, how, like I had said in the story, I was telling how my husband and I had had so much conflict, and so much of that was coming from lack of boundaries, lack of self-esteem, being clear about what we both desired, what we both were able to put in. So we were just kind of fighting about who was doing what and what was fair. And really, I have on Periscope a friend, she's awesome, Julia Counselor. She did a broadcast the other day, and she was saying why she doesn't do couples counseling anymore. And it was because she just kept having this realization that every couples counseling session, what was really going on was their personal stuff. And when they could work on their personal issues and resolve them, they really showed up for each other more. So I think it can be one of the most selfless acts to actually become more self-aware and practice that personal growth, because then you show up in a much more powerful and in a stronger way for the people in your life, and that benefits them as well.
I love that. And my husband was like my biggest example of self-care, because I was not taught that. I was taught, you know, you sacrifice, you sacrifice, you sacrifice. But my husband is like one of the most well-balanced people. He's like one of those people that you can't find someone who doesn't like him, because he's just so lovable and so happy, and so, you know, he just has a really great aura about him. It's kind of annoying to be married to him, but it's good most of the time. But he, when we started dating, it was like, and we started living together after we got married, it was like he wasn't home a lot during the week. And I was like, what do you mean you're not home all this? Like, you should be home more. And he's like, well, you know, I go to my men's group. He does the Mankind Project, and I volunteer there, and I do this, and I have, you know, my Aikido classes. And it was just like, how selfish, right? Coming from my perception, where, you know, everybody sacrifices for the family, you know, like how selfish it was. And at first it really annoyed me. And then I realized, you know what? It's because he does all of these things for himself that he is so wonderful, that he is loved by everybody. I mean, he was like the perfect example to me that, I mean, everybody loves him and thinks he's worthy, even though he spends a ton of time taking care of himself, like a ton of time. And that's what works. I mean, so it really had to put that piece, because my fear was, what happens if I stop to take care of myself? Will I lose value to everyone else who depends on me? You know, that whole story that we can put in our mind that, you know, the whole world kind of depends on everything that I do. Yeah, no, it can actually go on without us. But we make ourselves so, I made myself so responsible for everything, you know, well, if he's not here, then I have to do this, that, and the other thing. And I think that it can.
Yeah. my partner the other week, I'd been in Melbourne working. I had a stand at the Fitness Expo and was running a VIP down there. And so I was gone for 5 days. I got back and he was just so negative and just in this bad mood. And it was because he'd just been looking after the kids every day by himself and didn't have time out for himself. So the week that I got back, I bought him tickets to see Iron Maiden for Christmas. So that was on last week. He saw them. He went to CrossFit a couple of times. And he went out on Friday night to I call it his nerd games. It's like a card game thing that he does. But then after he'd done those few things for himself, his whole attitude changed and he was so much nicer. And I'm the same. I'm like a cranky bitch if I don't have time out for
I have
myself.
a complete meltdown. I had one before my birthday a few years ago. All of a sudden before my birthday, I was like, does anyone on Facebook, I'm like, does anybody have a place I can go to the weekend just alone? Nobody's going to be there, just me. And I got offers, if you can believe this, from like all over the East Coast. And then I also got these, well, is everything okay? Are you having problems with your relationship? And it's like, no, I just need to go. I just need to be alone. I need to go think for myself. I need to have conversations with myself. Like, I just need to be alone because we can take on so much. I know I can take on so much that it becomes overwhelming sometimes. And you just need like a pause. Like, I just want to put a pause on the world and go take care of myself and come back. And I'm really lucky that I have a partner that, is okay with this and understands that I'm not off, going to run away or anything. I'm going to come back. I just need the time. So I think that taking care of ourselves is definitely very important. But as you can tell, I still have some work to do on it because I was like, well, it's both, right? But some of us, we feel good about taking care of other people. So we have to be careful to make sure that we're taking care of them because it suits us when we need self-care rather than we're doing it because we have to or we should. The should, that's another subject for 2 weeks from now. We're going to have that one on the show because I could go on and on about the should word.
Oh, yeah.
But, all right, ladies. Well, it's been an hour, so I'm going to wrap it up. I appreciate it so much that you ladies came on here. And, I'm going to stop the recording. Do you have anything else to say before we stop the recording?
No, just thanks for having us. It was great.
Hang on.
Yeah. Thank you.